Os YouTube, I got a topic video for you this time. Have you noticed that something is off about modern Sonic stories? Sure, they're the best things we've had in more than 15 years, but I do feel like something is missing from them, or more like there's a lack of freshness to it all. I'm talking from a narrative sense. Shadow Gens has great gameplay and the story's fine, but it's a bit dry. Let's just say in terms of narrative, I've gotten the most excited over a 2D game with no dialogue and a game with almost only dialogue in the past couple of years. So, after playing through every 6th gen Sonic game, the advanced games even, and Sonic 06, I'm finally able to put my problem into words. That's a joke, I've always been able to put my problem into words. I'm just now making a video about this because I don't have to go out of my way to get a lot of B-roll. But hey, sit back, relax as we go through this meta-narrative journey of explaining the problem with modern Sonic storytelling and writing. And if you enjoyed the video, please sure to like and subscribe for more meta-narrative contextual content like this, which is what I'm already doing anyway, so let's start at the beginning of Sonic stories just to get a feel for them and see where things start to fall off. You have the original trilogy, which is pretty neat for the time, a lot of visual storytelling even in Sonic 1, which is pretty standalone on its own. Then CD was kind of forced to fit where it needed to be after the fact, but they kept using things from it even back in the day. And then 2 leads directly into 3 and K, where they gradually build on their visual storytelling method. It's all nice stuff. Even without words, all of these characters have strong characterization. You know how cool Sonic is, how childish Tails is, how hard-headed Knuckles is. And then a lot of this is helped by supplementary material that you can read in a manual, but because I'm a child of the 90s, I can't forget the media outside the games like cartoons, comics, and OVAs. Even the spin-offs can give you a little peek on how the series will move forward in handling itself, especially if you look back on it nowadays. Even if disconnected from the games, they are a fun way to experience the series if you weren't lucky enough to own a Genesis as a kid, which I didn't. I could only play it at my cousin's house or when he brought it over. It's those shows and Sonic 3D Blast on PC which allowed me to be a fan of the Hedgehog until I was able to get my first mainline game. And yes, while some of that outside material had its own charms and its own writing quirks, for the games, the first biggest pop-off was Sonic Adventure. Characters gained a voice that fleshed them out more than ever, more thought was put into expressing them through their actions and their lore, and some have arcs that allowed them to grow from how they were portrayed in the prior games and expanded material. The more I think about how they used up every little bit of writing they gave Amy and Tails in previous games or spin-offs to give them arcs about self-confidence or a desire to start doing things for themselves, the more impressed I am with SA1's story. Then you have a continuation with SA2. That game feels pretty independent narratively, but there's a bunch of little things that help it fit in, like Tails having a Chaos Emerald because he saved Station Square in the last game for a plot connection, and also Tails honoring what he thinks is Sonic's dying words by defeating Eggman for a character one. That's a nice little bow on his character arc from the first game because Sonic actually asked him this time. Add in Eggman getting further characterized with his family, the addition of characters like Rouge and Shadow which become mainstays, it just rounds everything out. And while Sonic Heroes feels even more disconnected, it actually references the past the most out of every game so far. Also, Shadow the Hedgehog exists, the character and now the game. And while the game does try to do something interesting with the previous lore and setup of the last game, it falls flat on its face and barely scrapes by on themes and vibes alone. But if you want the best continuations of narrative after SA2, it's Sonic Battle on the GBA, and by best I mean it wraps up Shadow's story while actually tackling how events that happened in SA2 affect him and the way he thinks moving forward. But Sonic Battle also has the bonus of having low stakes for most of its story, so every character can just freely express themselves without worrying about an ongoing plot or arc. Some characters, might rub some people the wrong way because low stakes tends to equal high joke count, and she's pushing it a little in that game. Now, Sonic 06 is interesting because I think it's a small peek into what I would consider our current problem. Having wrapped up Shadow's story in the last game, 06 takes this chance to even the narrative out a bit. The stuff that happened before has happened, but there's not a lot of hard or even soft connections to previous games other than Shadow and our new characters being there. And because this is a new game for a new console generation of Sonic gamers, the writers took this chance to re-establish our characters for new people coming into the series. For a static character like Sonic, he's doing just fine like he was in every other game. For a new character like Silver, he's getting his establishment right now. So that means my problem now lies with Shadow. How do you express who Shadow is without digging back into his themes? His very personal and very specific themes. Well, you just show them to me and tell me what they are. It's very easy. But what you don't do is make a poor thematic retelling of his story in Shadow 05, which is what they did. Let me explain. In Shadow 05, Shadow has to figure out the truth of his past, while his actions in the past game affect how everyone interacts with him in this one. Well, mostly how the commander interacts with him, but that's the point. No matter how good you are, you will always have humans shooting at you until the end of the video game. 06 wants to try and tell that same type of story, but omit his actions or even humans that would betray him from this plot. Humanity fears those which it finds too powerful to control. Yeah, are you gonna show me that at all? No. It's only a shallow imitation of only a part of what 05 was going for, even if Shadow as a character is better written in 06. And it's specifically this issue that I think is the problem with a lot of our mainline stories. Sure, after 06, Sonic's friends were thrown on the back burner, becoming secondary characters or being omitted outright, but to be honest, they aren't used enough or in serious enough situations for me to feel like they were even being ruined, so I never gave it much thought to begin with. On the scales of characters not being used as much as I'd like them to be in the mid-2000s era, and they're not being written as well as they could be in the late 2010s, early 2020, oh man, time's real. Both of those feelings kinda even out. I want more and better. The biggest difference is there's not a lot to critique when they aren't around, and there is a lot to critique when they start trying to give characters arcs again, like in Sonic Frontiers. But you have to understand, Sonic Frontiers is in a spot where it does have to re-establish our characters, and it has more reason to do so than 06 did because of what happened in the mid-2000s. Because the series had a new flock of fans from two extremely successful movies. A lot of kids are in the same position I was in the 90s, and the games had to do something about getting them used to a Sonic that was different than the one they just saw on the big screen. So once again, not a matter of intent, but expression. Just like Shadow in 06, Frontiers decides to give similar arcs to its secondary characters, but from Sonic Adventure. Amy wants to go out and see the world, Knuckles feels a certain kind of way about his role as the guardian of the Master Emerald, and Tails has a confidence issue. Now, I personally hate repetitive character arcs, but giving an abridged version of one isn't an inherently bad idea. And I also acknowledge and accept the fact that these can't be as good as SA1 because none of these characters have their own separate campaigns all to themselves. My problem is that these don't feel like an abridged examination of these characters from over the years. It feels as if we're introducing these aspects for the first time. And for a game that goes out of its way to reference the past as much as a Sonic Heroes, I don't think it should feel like this. One mentality in writing like this is that just because a character learned a lesson doesn't mean they can't relearn it, and that's a good reason to refresh a bunch of people on a character's arc, but to do that well, you need to first set them up for that situation. Frontiers doesn't have any setup for our secondary characters, so when Amy goes on about seeing the world and spreading love, whatever that means, even if that means she'll be separated from Sonic, I just can't help but think that she does that already. Knuckles will finally get off his island, which is funny even when you take the newer games into account. And then there's Tails. Tails. He has the best meta excuse to actually shape up his character from the past games because he was the only one being used enough to actually get ruined in any kind of way, and his arc is still as new as everyone else's. Sure, you can throw in the line of, well, I guess I'm inconsistent then, all you want, but if you also throw in the line of, I want to show you the hero I can become, it feels disconnected from the previous games you are actively referencing. And active is a very good word to use for a game that is speaking in a lot of past tense for characters that cannot be active for most of it. I think the Eggman memos are a very good example on how this game writes its characters because it handles them the way it explains them. Amy has grown, Knuckles is formidable, Tails is very adept, but it doesn't give action to why Eggman would think that way, and neither does this game give action in its past tense and references on how these characters have become the way they are. Except Tails, but then again, it doesn't feel like this game can look more than 3 games back for dealing with its characterization. And by dealing with, I mean wiping someone's ass because they did ruin Tails. And pumping the brakes real quick for a sec, this isn't a video to blame a singular person or certain group of writers for anything. This is a series evaluation, so I'm blaming everyone equally who was involved in the process, even if I can personally point out some issues I have with specific writers. And to dive right back into my problem with this repetitive or weaker writing, it's not just that it's weaker than what we got in 98, it's that there's this weird feeling of change that seems to be looming over the game. And I think that's definitely the consensus that the fans have gotten. And on a meta level, yes, I want change, which is these characters will be used more often and will get more characterization. But I also have to ask the question, well, what's going to change and be different? Where are we going to move them from that they haven't already been in the early 2000s? And then speaking of the mid-2000s, Shadow Generations also doesn't escape this issue for me. It is nice to see Maria and Black Doom in a story that doesn't suck ass, a story together that doesn't suck ass, and it's even pretty good. But as someone who has consumed every bit of Sonic media since 2005, I kind of eaten this before. So, have we found the real answer to the problem with modern Sonic story writing? Is it that Hawk is an old bitch? Yes, but also, I'm not excited by all of this reheated food. There's nothing new for me to chew on, and it's not as good as the first time. And sadly, some of this is also extended to media focused on the games like Tales Tube. It's a cute show to help people catch up and learn about the lore of the world and its characters with some cute bits in it. But for an old bitch like me, these topics are Snoresville. You go online and you see blander character profiles. These shorts are super cool and cute, but again, coasting on the coattails of the past. Do I like seeing Emerald again? Cool, I think it's great. Do I like seeing Shadow have PTSD over Maria? No, not really, especially when you remind me of the game where he held that feeling in his chest and it powered him up. You know, just like you did in the game that you're promoting. And that's not to say both can exist at the same time. You can have a super complicated character like that, but again, setup. Why does he suddenly not want to remember her? And the answer is more people played Shadow 05 than they played Sonic Battle. And once again, I very much need to stress that retreading character arcs needs to happen. There are 19-year-olds that think Sonic 3 is only a movie. Sega's gotta tell it to them, and they did, they ported that game. But I think it could have been handled in a better way than what we have, right? Like, back to Frontiers, Amy could have mentioned past events, but had a more active speech, right? She could have talked about places that she visited without Sonic, because she has. Knuckles can also talk about places he's visited without Sonic, because he had a lot of exploring in Sonic the Hedgehog. And Tails can be disappointed in his actions, but more frustrated in a sense of, I know that I'm better than this. And personally, not have his sense of self revolve around Sonic. I just really liked how in SA1 the focus was on him having an adventure by himself. Even if Sonic is his benchmark, he doesn't need reassurance from him. And while I can concede a game like Shadow Gens is in fact the greatest hits of Shadow the Hedgehog, both of them, it isn't just telling Shadow's story over again, but its script does sometimes just become word for word dialogue that's been spoken before sometimes. It's not just the cringe reference machine that is the intro to Sonic vs. Shadow, but the emotional moments like explaining the meaning of his name, that he is the shadow that leads you to the light, but to stress once more, I'm a big old bitch that read the webcomic where that line came from over 10 years ago? 10 years ago, maybe. The point is, even if someone has known Sonic for as long as I have, there's a good chance they haven't read that and they saw that in Shadowgens for the first time, and that's valid. I'm just tired. But all of this complaining is not to say that there isn't new material in our recent games. I like Sage, I like Trip, it's just that our old characters are kinda bland to me. And even outside of the games, there's new material for me to sink my teeth into, like those movies that we're talking about, or you can read the comics. They're really good, whether they're canon to the games or not. They're not. At least not until they're put into a mainline game, they're not. Don't fall for the PR trick. Enjoy stories just for the sake of enjoying them. You can look up stuff on Sonic Channel's JP site. Sure, it will be machine translated, but they've been doing little stories and drawing pictures that tie everything together for years. They're my phone's wallpapers and I get a new one every month. Sonic Prime. That's it. It exists. And then there are the spin-off video games that give me what I want to see. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is probably some of the best character writing in the whole series. I mean, it's a visual novel. If it wasn't doing that, it'd be bad, but it's not. It's better than bad. It's good. And the final piece of media that proves you can take something old and make it new again in a mainline Sonic game, remake or not, the Shadowgens manga. The Jet Black Hedgehog, Shadow the Hedgehog. It sounds better in Japanese, at least a little bit. It gave me something I didn't know I wanted until I had it. What if you followed Shadow from 50 years ago, right after seeing Maria get shot and ejected from the Ark, deal with the game's storyline? I think this manga is written better than the video game, and I know that I've complained about the game a bit, but I do think that game is well written, so I'm giving the manga really high praise right now. And it's not like the manga's doing a lot, but it's that new interpretation that gives it that freshness that I've been desiring. So all in all, to condense this into an easily snippable clip, the problem with modern Sonic writing is that I'm a big old bitch and I want something actually new for our characters to deal with. I accept the situation the franchise is in and having to introduce new people to the differences of the games from outside media, but I also wish we weren't retreading water in situations that inherently kneecapped characterization. But I also don't think that's an excuse for worse storytelling. They could have done a better job with our secondary cast, and I'm glad to see glimpses of that in other media even if it isn't in our mainline games. It makes me understand that I'm not crazy in feeling the way that I do. And to end this on an optimistic note, I think we'll eventually get to see what I want to see out of the series, which isn't a big want to be honest. Oh no, he wants our characters in a new scenario, It's just that this promise of something new doesn't excite me yet. I know people are tired of the phrase, blank Sonic game is a step in the right direction, but you can't blame them for saying that when we don't know what our next real mainline game is even going to be. Shadowgens is just glorified DLC. The only thing we can do is wait, so I'll wait. My desire for how they will handle the writing going forward is still the same as what I said in my Frontiers review, which is, I hope that the English and Japanese side come together closer to create writing for the story all the way through next time. I think that's what would be best for everyone. I just want to be excited for a new Sonic story and not leave it feeling lukewarm like I have been for the past couple of games. Well, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like. In fact, you can also tell me what Sonic property got you into the series. If you want to see me go way too in-depth with Sonic games from writing to gameplay, I have a playlist for you and something more collective coming out soon. But until we meet again, mata ao, until we meet again.